High stakes, heart-pounding moments, pressure like you wouldn't believe, almost flops, and moments that I will always remember. This is the Nick Solomon Show, the Sports Chatter Podcast. Let's get it started.
Spokes to scores! Watford for the win! Yeah! You can't make this stuff up, folks.
God, that all young guys should really take back and look at what this man has done.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Nick Solomon Show, the Sports Chatter Podcast. This is episode 15, and it's an absolutely insane time right now to be a sports fan. Why? Because we are on the cusp of the NBA playoffs. The NHL playoffs also are just starting this weekend. I think the last game is either today or tomorrow on a Friday, but the playoffs are also this weekend, right when the NBA playoffs are starting. The NCAA tournament just ended. Baseball is roughly 20 games in. The Masters ended this past weekend. Shout out to Scottie Scheffler on an amazing run, by the way. He was absolutely on point with every stroke, with every single day. Pretty much from start to finish, he was the clear-cut winner of the Masters. So congratulations to him. And also, the NFL draft is just next weekend. So many different things had just concluded or just about to kick off. And what a great time to be a sports fan. But to recap a little bit of the NCAA tournament, both from the men's side and the women's side. But before I get into the dance of each one, shout out to Indiana State Sycamores. They had an amazing run this season, and rightfully so, should have been included in the regular field of 64 for the NCAA March Madness. Instead, they were regulated to the NIT tournament. Now, they did claim the number one seed in the NIT brackets, and they marched all the way to the championship game and unfortunately came up short against Seton Hall. It was a great season, great NIT tournament run, and congratulations to the Sycamores on an unbelievable season. But to recap a little bit of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, the UConn Huskies have won back-to-back champions. It's the first back-to-back champion in the men's game since Florida did it in the 07-08 seasons. UConn's win, by the way, their win came over Purdue. The final score was 75-60, and I couldn't have been happier about that too, because the greater the rise for Purdue, the sweeter the fall is going to be. I mean, yeah, sure, push them to the title game, get their hopes up, and then just smash them. That was beautiful to watch. And what's great is they probably won't be back to the national title again for probably another 40 years, just like their last one. So, still though, I'll give a little bit of love to the Boilermakers. They had a great season. They were a number one seed in the Midwest region. They dominated their side of the bracket. Rightfully was one of the top teams remaining. Rightfully should have been in the championship game. Rightfully got their asses whipped. So, congrats. At least you made it. At least you made it. But UConn's championship and run to the title game was just as evenly impressive than their actual game itself. I mean, they absolutely destroyed their eastern side, their East region side of the bracket. Absolutely marched through. And they had some tough opponents. San Diego State, Iowa State, their East Region final versus I can't even think of it at the moment here, but they didn't have easy games. Even against Alabama in the Final Four game, it wasn't an easy matchup. And Purdue's not an easy matchup. They made it seem easy. Their average margin of victory was 23.3 points per game. And it wasn't like they had huge blowouts in the early rounds, and then when it came to the later rounds, they had closer games. They did have closer games, but their closest game through that 6-game stretch was 13 points. That was their closest game. So yes, they had some 30-point blowouts, but they were blowing out every team regardless. If your closest game is 13 points, yeah, you're handling teams pretty good. I mean, you're sending your backups in with like 3 minutes to go in the half. That's how far out stretched they were. So some of these games, had they kept the starters in, the margin of victory could have been a lot more. I mean, I think their Elite Eight matchup. They had like a 3 or 4 point lead going into halftime. Before you know it, in the second half, they were up by 30. Went on a 30-0 run. 30-0 run. I don't care what level you are. That's impressive. That's hard to do. UConn, rightfully so, was the most consistent team all season long and deserve to be back-to-back champions. So congratulations to the Huskies of Connecticut. For the women's side of things, the NCAA Women's National Championship game featured South Carolina and Iowa. And as impressive as Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeyes have been, and as much attention as they have gathered and have brought up the women's game, unfortunately, they fell short in the title game again. South Carolina beat Iowa 87-75. However, for those of you who watched the game, that first quarter was the most amazing first quarter you will ever see a singular player do. WNBA or collegiate. Caitlin Clark, who has since been drafted number 1 overall by the Indiana Fever, and we are excited to have her here, and hopefully her and LA Boston could make some noise here. But back to that title game, Caitlin Clark scored 18 points in the first quarter alone. Now, she ended with somewhere in the 20s, and she didn't shoot that great in the second half, or really from the second quarter on, but that first quarter, 18 points. That's an improbable feat that she did, and that just elevates the greatness that is Caitlin Clark. So that was an amazing title game to see. And South Carolina, undefeated season, they were a machine on the women's side. I mean, for those who didn't think that South Carolina was just going to roll every single opponent, you are really biased to your school, because that's essentially what happened. Not that they didn't have tough games, because IU played them closer. IU was actually their closest matchup in the Sweet 16 game. I think South Carolina only won by 4, something along the lines of that. That was their closest game. So IU gave them almost a scare. Everyone else, including Iowa, they pretty much beat. If not in the opening stages of the game, fourth quarter, rolling away with it. But Iowa deserved to be there too. They were one of the other best teams in the country. They had a tough gauntlet of teams to go through. Colorado, LSU, UConn, South Carolina. No real easy ones on Iowa's path to that title game versus South Carolina, and they beat them all. But sometimes the pipe bursts, and that's kind of what happened there. So it was an exciting March Madness. A lot of different upsets. Kentucky got upsetted in the first round. Wisconsin, I think, got upset in the first round. We had a couple 12 and 10 seeds advance on. So, I don't think anyone saw Clemson getting to the Elite Eight. Or I'm blanking on it. Arizona and North Carolina getting knocked out the same weekend in the Sweet 16. So it was unbelievable March Madness, and just can't wait till next year. As I also mentioned before, the NFL draft is almost upon us. We are roughly about a week away from round 1 of the NFL draft. For those of you who don't know how the NFL draft works, it is done over 3 days. Round 1 is Thursday. Then on Friday, they cover rounds 2 and 3. And then on Saturday, it's rounds 4 through 7. There's only 7 rounds in the NFL draft. I'm sure I'll put the correct number here, but I want to say there's 256 total picks in the NFL draft spread across 7 rounds and 3 days. And we'll highlight the Colts here real quick because that's really all that matters. I don't care about Chicago. I don't care about New Orleans. I don't care about Jacksonville. The Colts are the only ones that I care about. So let's analyze and break down how I think their pick is going to go and maybe who they should target. So the Colts have the 15th overall pick right now as it stands. As we may move closer or even during draft night, that could change. Chris Ballard has been known to trade out of the first round because collecting picks is his biggest thing. And the Colts currently have 7 picks, 1 in each round. I fully expect that not to be the case. Again, Chris Ballard, the Colts general manager, has a reputation of trading out of picks. Now, sometimes he will trade a bunch of picks to move up into the draft to get a higher selection, but usually that doesn't come until maybe round 2, round 3 is usually when he's known to do that. But round 1, he is known to trade out of it. This may be his first draft where he's had a middle round pick. So usually he's had either a later round one or a higher pick. So we'll see kind of what he does. Those middle round picks can be difficult. A lot of times how the draft works, there's a run on a certain position. So he may have the complete board as far as prospects are concerned with who he wants at a certain position. But that doesn't mean that specific position where it's like the number 1 available person at that position doesn't mean it's a position of need. Like, what if the really talented tight end from Georgia, Brock Bowers, is sitting there at the 15th overall pick? He's an unbelievable talent. But unlike the NBA, where you sort of draft based off of best player available, in the NFL, more times than not, it's the best player at the positions that you need the most. So many times, if it's a wide receiver that you need, and 4 of the top 6 are taken off the board, you're going to pick number 5 over the number 1 offensive lineman or number 1 tight end that may still be available, because you don't need an offensive lineman or you don't need a tight end, but you need a wide receiver. So those are all the things that are considered when going into an NFL draft and seeing how NFL teams draft and how they evaluate. Now, there's still outliers. A lot of times the rich get richer type of example. And I'll even give a more personal example to that with the Colts. So the Colts, again, are picking 15th. This is the 3rd time in franchise history, or I should say this will be the 4th time in franchise history that they are picking with the 15th overall pick. The three other times, the last time they picked 15th overall was, I think, the 2015 NFL draft when they selected Philip Dorsett. That's right. You guys remember the selection of Philip Dorsett. At the time, the Colts had a pretty good receiving core. They had Reggie Wayne still. They had T.Y. Hilton. I don't know if we got Andre Johnson, if that was the year they drafted on, or they picked up Andre in free agency or not, but spending a first-round pick on a wide receiver was not the highest that the Colts needed that specific year. We had gone 8-8 the year before, and we were solid. Not that you couldn't draft a receiver, but not in the first round. And so that was what was considered a luxury pick. You strengthen what you already have, but that's not necessarily how the NFL works sometimes. There's a lot more people on the field, a lot more pieces that need to be there. So it's better to be balanced overall than to say, we have the best receiving core out there. All four of our receivers could be number one on any other team, but we have four number ones on our team. But if you don't have an offensive line, if you don't have a quarterback that can give them the ball, then guess what? Having really stars at one specific area isn't going to matter. So I will say their last few first-round picks, let's say, since 2018. So since 2018, the past few first-round picks that the Colts have selected. So in last year's draft, they selected Anthony Richardson. In 2022, they didn't have a first-round pick. They had traded that one away to Philadelphia, I think. Yes, because that was the Carson Wentz stupid thing. But that was the Carson Wentz draft pick that we gave away. In 2021, they selected Kwity Paye. In the 2020 draft, we traded our first-round pick before the draft for DeForest Buckner. So you can almost, who was a part of the San Francisco 49ers at the time. So you can almost say that our first-round pick was spent on DeForest Buckner. In 2019, we also didn't have a first-round draft pick, and I can't remember why, but our draft pick was given to Washington, and I don't know why that was the case. I don't know who we got from Washington or what was or why, but we didn't have a draft pick in 2019. In 2018, we selected Quentin Nelson, Big Q. So those have been the last sort of 6 NFL first-round draft picks that the Colts have selected. As far as this year, sort of what their team needs are, they need a cornerback, a linebacker, a safety, interior offensive lineman, defensive tackle, and running back. Those are my sort of 6 positional needs that the Colts need heading into this draft. Now, not that particular order as far as what position they should draft when. How I would use their first pick if they stay at 15, I would draft a corner. There's 3 big-time corners that will probably be available in that area of the draft, and that's probably where I would go. We drafted 2 corners last year, one in the 2nd round, one in the 7th round, and both of them produced really well for rookies, but they were rookies. They had their head-scratching moments, but you're only going to get another year development under their belt, and for what it's worth, they did a really solid job. For being rookies, they did a solid job. So, but only adding to that, we're really young in our secondary, both safeties and corners, so just adding to that and just growing and developing them. So I see getting a corner for their first pick. Other than that, I mean, I think they really need every other position, by the way, other than corner, I think is just depth. I don't think anyone that they're drafting, other than maybe a corner, is going to be considered day one starter. I think they're all going to be rotational pieces, depth pieces, pieces that just fill out that positional group. I just think the Colts overall have their starters in place. The only question mark is sort of at corner. So other than corner, I can see them drafting a linebacker just for depth. I can see them drafting a safety for depth, a running back to sit behind Jonathan Taylor, interior offensive lineman. So those are sort of some of the positions I see them drafting. And again, they're just going to be sort of rotational ones. Outside of corner, I see every other position just being role players. So I'm excited to see what the Colts do. At least we don't have to. Last year we didn't have to wait that long at all because the Colts had a 4th overall pick. But just how long each team gets in the first round, it'd be like half the night waiting for them. But at least they're not in the 20s. And then when you get to pick 26 and we're finally on the clock, oh, Chris Ballard's trading the pick. So I stayed up for 3.5 hours for nothing. Thanks, Chris Ballard. Should have known. But this year he's got the 15th pick. I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth on if I was the GM of the Colts, which maybe one day, would I stay with that pick right now? It depends who's available. But I can see him trading out of that pick, trading down. I don't know if he'll trade out. If he trades out of the first round from the 15th pick, we would get a massive haul back. But I can see him trading down a couple spots. Maybe still staying within the top 20, but I don't see him moving up. He's not the type of guy that would trade a lot of draft picks to move up into the first round. Unless it's like Marvin Harrison Jr. Just saying, Marvin Harrison Jr. All right, so I'm going to move forward with a current big sort of topic that's going around the NBA right now. Sort of breaking story that developed yesterday and I should really say Tuesday night, but it was really talked about yesterday and it's being continued to talk about, and a lot more details have come out about it. So what it is that I am referring to is the NBA gambling problem, and more specifically, the case involving Jontay Porter. For those of you who don't know, Jontay Porter is a forward for the Toronto Raptors / their NBA G League team, which I'm not familiar or cannot remember what their G League team is called. He's basically not even a role player, but more likely a bench player. Doesn't see a lot of playing time, doesn't produce a lot. He's also, if you are wondering, the younger brother of Michael Porter Jr., who plays for the Denver Nuggets and is a starter for them and a NBA champion. But Jontay Porter has been banned for life by the NBA. Banned for life by the NBA. Why? Because he was caught cheating. I'm sorry, not caught cheating. Well, yes, sort of cheating the game in essence, but he was caught gambling. What a dummy. Absolutely one of the dumbest players. There's been a lot of people, NFL, NBA, MLB, who have been caught gambling. But this story that I'll tell you here in a second and that you'll read here a little bit is you just look at the guy and you just say, what a dum-dum. What a dum-dum. You know you're going to get caught. Look at all your peers, predecessors. You're going to get caught. So listen to this. So we'll start by saying a game on March 20th, he put put a 80,000, well, not him specifically, a friend of his bet for him on that friend's account, $80,000 bet on him that he would underperform. And the winnings would be, I think it was 1.1 million. Well, first we'll just start with that real quick. $80,000 to win 1.1. That's, yes, $1 million is $1 million, but that's such a small winnings compared to how much you put in. That's the same as betting $8 and winning $110. Yes, now I would take that because you put $8 on something, you won over 100, like that's great, but it's not exactly boo-hoo type. Yes, $1 million's $1 million, but you did put $80,000 down. One would think if you bet $80,000, you'd get a higher return than just 1.1 million. It's like betting $80 for $1,000 basically. Now, one would think that $80,000 you think would raise a red flag. Like, you should have just bet $80 and win $1,000. Like, that's not going to raise any sort of flags. At least not even any right away. But you'd bet $80,000 to win $1 million. That's gonna raise the bettors, the people who are putting the bet on. It's gonna raise an eyebrow for them. It's gonna draw attention to yourself. But all in all, he bet on 13 games, and 13 games that he did not attend on. Some of these games in which he bet on the Raptors to lose. Now, catch this. Now, isn't this karma? All three of those games in which he bet on the Raptors to lose, the Raptors won. So that's kind of karma for him. It's just absolutely just crazy to hear why. He hasn't given a reason why, but I get it. His compensation isn't that much, but through all of the different wagers he's put on and the winnings he's gotten, all in all, he's only won about $22,000. So a guy who was probably making minimum wage, probably $500,000 or so, whatever his contract is, to throw it all away, his career away, for $22,000. A number that the average American will see in a year. Okay, we're not talking about, $800,000 that the average American may see in his lifetime. No, we're talking about $22,000. Dude was banned for life from the NBA for $22,000. That's just completely flabbergasted that someone would do that. Like, I can't even justify for him why he would do that. He would need to do that. I mean, you were getting compensated more than what you actually won. It's one thing if it was like, oh, he won $22 million. Like, all right, at least I can understand, because maybe he wasn't going to make that much money, so putting all the chips forward, I got to get there somehow if my talent isn't going to get there. But $22,000, dude, you already make way more than that. And that's how much you actually, I mean, what is it? What were you going to do with that? What were you planning on doing with that? Unless it's like parking ticket money or something like that. It's the privilege that not even NBA stars, but the privilege that all professional athletes get, and then just seeing them wasted away. It frustrates me. It grinds my gears. It makes me sad. And it just makes me shake my head. And it's just all that privilege that you've been given. It's just like you don't care. And it wasn't even that he was helping a friend out. This was for him. This friend of his was doing this on his behalf. It's completely just wild. Completely wild. Alrighty, guys. This is the end of our show here. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching episode 15 of the Sports Chatter podcast. I'm really excited for you guys to stay tuned for episode 16. And I think I'll just leave it at that. So, episode 16, be on the lookout for that. Thank you, guys. Catch you next time.